I'm here today to talk about this particular M95 carbine, which has no less than 6 battle names carved onto the stock. In fact, the whole stock is covered in carvings. Initially, the Burgher's name is J.C.Roux, which is on the top of the handguard. Then on this side, he's got Natal ingetrokken, 12th of October 1899. The war started on the 11th of October 1899, and the next day Boer horsemen poured into the colony of Natal. On the other side of the stock, they've recorded, or he has recorded, the very first battle in Natal, which was Dundee. In this particular instance, the Boers occupied 2 hills. They crept up to Dundee, the British were totally unaware of the fact that the Boers were there. They opened fire on the British camp, and the battle began. General Penn Simmons, who was in charge of the British troops, was actually mortally wounded. He was going up and down on his horse, telling the troops what to do, and he was taken out by a Boer marksman. The British attacked the hill at the point of the bayonet. They inflicted a lot of casualties on themselves because the artillery was actually firing too low, and some of the British troops were killed by their own field guns. However, they did manage to drive the Boers off the hill. The 18th Hussars were sent around the side of the Talana Hill in an endeavour to cut off the Boers when they retreated. However, the Boers turned the tide on the cavalry and captured about 200 of them. They were sent to a POW camp and spent until about, I think it was July, before they were released. The British claimed this as a victory. It was really a 50-50 episode because although the British awarded the bar Talana to the Queen's South Africa medal, they actually deserted Dundee. They realised that they were surrounded. Within 2 days they escaped. They took off at night and made their way towards Ladysmith. Next battle we have on this carbine is Elandslaagte, which is very neatly carved into a scroll, as well as the date 21st of October 1899. This was turned out to be a set-piece battle. The Boers had overestimated their orders, and General Koch had gone as far as Elandslaagte, which was a little station, and occupied a hill there. The British General White sent his troops out, and it was a set-piece battle, as I said. The British infantry attacked at the point of the bayonet in a frontal attack. They sent the Gordon Highlanders and the Imperial Light Horse around the flank, and they attacked the Boers from that position. Eventually they managed to drive the Boers off the hill, inflicted quite severe casualties on the Boers, and captured at least one of their field guns. The Boers jumped onto their ponies to make a quick escape at the back of the hill, but unbeknown to them, the 5th Lancers and the 5th Dragoon Guards were waiting in the wings. It was all pre-planned. As the Boers tried to leave the field, the Lancers charged directly at them, and so did the Dragoons. There were a couple of charges made, and many of the Boers were cut down by Lancers and sabres. It left a very sour taste in the Boer mouths. They vowed to kill any British Lancer that they found in the future, because they found that, or they felt that it was barbaric fighting with Lancers. After Elandslaagte, the next battle, which is carved on the right-hand side of the stock, is Modderspruit. The Boers refer to the Battle of Ladysmith as Modderspruit, whereas the British refer to it as the Battle of Ladysmith, which involved Nicholson's Neck and Lombard's Kop. General White decided to sort these Boers out, so he sent out 2 columns of infantry as well as guns. To cut a long story short, it was a complete disaster. The Boers routed the British and in fact drove them off the field. There were 927 British troops taken POW, about 150 killed and many wounded, whereas the Boers lost a total of 200 casualties, all up, killed and wounded. The Boer commander was General Piet Joubert. He was an old man. He was a hero from the First Boer War, and they kept him as the Commandant General of the ZAR. He was very reluctant to follow up on his success. Had there been younger Boer generals like Christian de Wet and Louis Botha, who were present during the battle, they urged him to let loose his horsemen, Rossio Reiters, They wanted the Boers to charge the British as they were retreating and turn it into a complete rout, which it would have been. But Joubert was a very religious man. He said, when God shows a finger, don't take the whole hand. And he said, no, let them be. So he lost a golden opportunity, and the British would have lost very heavily had they listened to the younger and wiser heads. We come to another one here. It's Colenso, the name Colenso, and it's got a wreath of leaves around it. Colenso was the final battle of what was known as Black Week. In 1 week, the British forces in South Africa suffered 3 severe reverses. The first was at Stormberg under General Gattaca, where they had a dawn attack, which went wrong. The troops marched overnight, and they were going to attack the Stormberg in the early morning. A guide lost the way, and they attacked. They were on the wrong hill, so it was a complete wipeout for the British. There were about 600 POWs taken by the Boers, and 50 killed on the British side, and about 100 wounded. The Boers lost, I think, 8 killed and a few wounded. The next battle was Margetsfontein under Lord Methuen. In this instance, the Boers had dug trenches below Margetsfontein Kopje. The British had sent out scouts, the 9th Lancers and the De Man's Horse of Remington's guides. In actual fact, they had warned Methuen that they'd seen Boers at the base of the hill, as they had done at Modder River. But Methuen chose not to listen to their advice. In the early morning, he sent the cream of the British Army, the Guards Brigade and the Highland Brigade forward on foot. They went to about 500 yards before the Boers opened fire. They were concealed. The British could not see the Boers in the trenches, and they were hit by this murderous Mauser rifle fire. And as they said, they cut swathes in the ranks of the Highlanders. So that was a complete rout. The troops were pinned down in the African sun all day long, lying down. They basically couldn't move. If they did move, the Boers would snipe at them. So eventually, towards the end of the day, they left the field, and in fact, some of them turned into a rout and actually ran off the field. So that was a shock to the British nation. It was left to Sir Redvers Buller, who'd been sent out, and he was taking charge of the complete British Army in South Africa. He'd moved up to Natal, and he decided that he was going to attack the Boers and relieve Ladysmith, which had been surrounded by the Boers. There were 3 towns in South Africa that were surrounded. There was Mafeking, Kimberley, and Ladysmith. So at Colenso, Buller got his whole army together, which was a lot bigger than the Boer army, and attacked on the 15th of December 1899. Unbeknown to him, the Boers under Louis Botha had very, very cleverly concealed their Boers riflemen in trenches all along the Tugela River. He'd also hidden his artillery pieces up in the hills. They were well camouflaged, and the British couldn't see them. The British advanced as they had done before, and once again they were met a murderous fire from Boer riflemen who were concealed. At the end of the day, Buller lost his nerve, and he ordered a retirement from the field. In doing so, he lost 10 of his field guns, which, as we know in military history, is the final disgrace if you lose your artillery in the field. When he got back the next day, he cabled the War Office to say, regret to advise severe reverse. And that was putting it mildly. There were huge casualties on the British side, and once again the Boers suffered very, very few casualties. And then last but not least, on this side of the stock is Spierenkop. Spierenkop was a few months later. It was also near the Tugela River. It was a stronghold, a high mountain, and Buller decided this would be the key to unlock Ladysmith. The British were very slow in moving their troops up towards Spearman's Hill, which is opposite Spierenkop. They built pontoon bridges over the Tugela River, and it took about 2 days to get their troops across the river. By this time, the Boers had seen exactly what was going on, and they reinforced Spierenkop. The British ascended Spierenkop at night. They got to they found a Boer picket very early in the morning, and they actually bayoneted a few of the Boers. And a few of the Boers ran down the hill and alerted the rest of the commandos that the British were taking the hill. As the dawn arose in the horizon, the British thought that they were on the summit of the hill, so they were ordered to start digging trenches. They started digging trenches, but unfortunately it was a very rocky hill, and with their bayonets and entrenching tools had been left behind, sandbags had been left behind, so all they could do was scrape out a few inches of sand before they hit rock and stone. So they built sangers with stone to the best of their ability, but they turned out to be very shallow trenches. When the mist had cleared later on in the morning, they found that they weren't on the summit of the hill, and the Boers had crept up behind them, and they were actually on the commanding height right above the British trenches. It turned out that the British were enfiladed from different sides, Aloe Knoll behind them. So the Boers opened fire, and the British basically were massacred in their trench. At the end of the day, Colonel Thornycroft had been put in charge. In fact, there was another blunder. The British had 3 different men who they'd put in charge. They didn't have field telephones. No one knew who was really in charge. The one general thought he was in charge, whereas in actual fact it was Thornycroft. Thornycroft was a very brave soldier, and he conducted a very good defence on Spinkop, but by the end of the day he said, I think we'll have to leave the field. So Thornycroft ordered his troops off the hill. They descended, and the Boers, as the dawn broke the following day, a few Boers crept up to the top of the hill, and they were astonished to find that the hill was deserted. To their absolute astonishment, the British had deserted the field, and the Boers poured up and mounted the summit and waved their flags and their rifles in victory. So it turned out to be a disastrous defeat for the British yet again, and a definite victory for the Boers. So I'm sure Burgher Roux put this name Spinkop with much delight, because it was most certainly a spectacular victory.